I got to see how much the media manipulate things and why they create all this fear and this control because of the stories. You have to learn how the whole game works for it to work for you. And you also have to be aware that sometimes things are going to get twisted and your story is going to be changed and there's quite literally nothing you can do about it. The best thing you can leverage is the exposure you're going to get from it. Welcome back to another episode on the Beauty Industry Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Sammy Kennedy. Today, I am going completely off script. I thought it would be really cool to have a genuine conversation around what went on behind the scenes when I was trying to get some PR done for Wild West Bowling. Now, if you have ever wondered what PR is about, or you've heard of it, but you're not sure what it actually is, PR stands for public relations. So essentially it is getting you into mainstream media, news outlets, anything like that where you can be seen in the public eye. And so what that's going to do is build up your credibility and your brand awareness. And as a business, that's such a great tool to get more traffic, people coming and seeing your socials, your website, your business, and coming in and becoming customers. And so for me, PR seemed like a smart strategy to get seen in our local area where the business is located. So Wild West Bowling is in Albany. I decided that I wanted a PR strategy to try get into local newspaper, radio, on the TV, etc. Now, previously I have been in the news. I've had news interviews. I have been in the newspaper, but a lot of the time they were coming to me rather than me coming to them. And so this time I had to be really strategic and think about, how do I approach these people? What kind of support do I need? How am I going to make this successful and actually work? And so I decided to go and get a PR coach, which if you haven't seen, I've been working with Heidi Anderson. She is absolutely amazing. She worked in radio for so many years. She had the Heidi Will and Woody show, and she's built up a lot of connections over the years, and being able to tap into her network and work with her and have her support and guidance, it has made such a massive difference. So the first thing that I had to get clear on was my brand, my vision, my goals, what I'm actually working towards. Because if you don't know what that bigger picture looks like for you, how are you meant to pitch that to other people? How are other people going to want to support or join you on that mission as well? And so if you're ever thinking about PR or wanting to get in news outlets or anything like that, you really have to be clear on why you want it, what you want that bigger picture to look like, and who you want to promote you or who you want to see you. So I got really clear on that. I was thinking we have to go local because a lot of the demographic here are not on platforms like Instagram and TikTok. They're a lot older, so majority of them are on Facebook, but because there is a big elderly community as well, they're still reading the newspaper. And so we thought, all right, we'll go to the West Australian and see what we can get there. They then directed us to the Albany Advertiser, which is the local newspaper. And I was able to get that pitch go through and have a reporter come out, do an interview for us. And she did an amazing write-up. And I'm going to talk more about that later. But the other thing that I was thinking is maybe I will try go for Perth news outlets as well, because even though Albany is a 4-hour drive away from Perth, there are a lot of people who do come down for holidays or they're tourists. And by being able to get some of those, I guess, news articles where maybe it's like things to do in Albany or best tourist activities, if we could get the business in those kind of articles, it would be super beneficial for us in the long term. So there were a few different things that were going through my mind, and obviously with that in mind, we had to think about how we were going to pitch. Now, when you pitch, you have to be short, sharp, clear, and concise. You can't waffle on. You have to be interesting and engaging. And most importantly, your story has to be newsworthy. It has to tie in with the specific news outlet that you are targeting. So, for example, if you're looking for free promotion or advertising with these news outlets, it's highly unlikely that they're just going to hand that to you on a silver platter, because they're going to go, no, you can just go to our advertising department and pay for an ad. And so when you're thinking about PR for your business, what I realized is I have to understand how these specific news outlets run. So if it's the newspaper, how do they structure their newspaper? What are the different kind of themes or topics that they talk about? What are the different sections? If it's the news, for example, what time do they run it? What kind of stories do they usually cover? How do they like to present their stories? And so when you have a deeper understanding of the type of magazine, newspaper, radio show, news, TV, whatever you're trying to aim towards, if you can understand how it works, it makes it a lot easier for you to pitch to them, because you're doing it so specific to their news outlet and you're making it a benefit to them. It's kind of like marketing, right? You're not just selling the product or service, you're selling the experience, the solution for that unique customer. And when they can see that you've personalized it towards them, they're more than likely to choose you as an option, rather than if they see this kind of cookie cutter approach. So doing the pitch was one thing that took a bit of time to get right. I did start off with making it too long, but I think my brownie points really came in when I decided, okay, we're going to cut this pitch down and we're just going to use some visuals that will really showcase the story without me having to write a lot of long form copy. As someone who loves to talk a lot and someone who loves long form copy, it was hard for me to cut down, but I thought, how can I create an engaging video that will showcase this story and do all the hard work for me? And so depending on where you're going, different kind of forms of media will prefer different types of pitches. So if you're trying to get on the news, you want to make sure you've got some photos and video assets that you can use, that if they were to create a story on you, they've got it there and ready to go. The easier you can make it for them, the least amount of work they have to do, the more likely they are to say yes. If this looks like a big job where they have to get a whole camera team out, they have to go find all these different people, they're going to go, oh, it's too much effort. Unless it's a really, really great story and they want to run it, they're probably not going to run it. So you've got to think, how do I make their life easy so they can sit there, go, this is a great story. Wow, they've got everything laid out for us, and they can just go, yep, we're going to run with that. If you're going to radio, you might have a short snippet of you talking. So obviously with radio, they want to make sure that you're great with your communication and your presentation. If someone were to pitch me to come on my podcast, I'd be looking through videos and any other podcasts they may have been interviewed on, and just see how they speak, how they present themselves, and how knowledgeable they are. Because if I can see that they are a great communicator and presenter, it's going to be like, wow, absolutely, this is great. You're going to be a great fit for the show. But if they aren't really confident with their speaking skills, if they struggle to articulate their ideas clearly, it makes it a lot harder for me to say, oh yeah, I think you'll be good for the show. And so you kind of want to give them something that they can see you and go, oh yeah, you're perfect for this. If you're looking for an article, then maybe you're providing them with some images that they could use in a magazine or they could use in a newspaper that could go with the written form copy. But what I found is my specific example with trying to get PR for bowling was I needed to think about what things are really interesting, but not going, hey, can you promote our grand opening for us? So I had to think, I got to take away everything that is around our grand opening and money making, and I need to look at what is the story behind this. And so when I dissected the story, I was looking at, we built a business during a cost of living crisis. Cost of living crisis is a massive topic that is always circling through the news. We closed our doors and had no income coming in from October 2023. This project was meant to take 6 months. It took 18 months. And with a budget of $600,000 to $700,000, it blew out to $1.7 million and almost sent us bankrupt. Now, on top of all of those financial side of things, we also had a lot of community support. So 66 local and national businesses came on board supporting us with labor, materials, and resources to help us see this project through. And so I really tied into the financial side, the community side, and then I spoke about what it's like being a small family business and being one of the last players to really have the opportunity to build a business to this size, as in a bowling alley, amusement center, restaurant, kind of food place, and a bar, all in that one location at this time, given the amount of rent or the prices of property going up, materials, inflation, and all of those things. Like, we aren't a big franchise or a large company that can just pour money into creating more franchises or more businesses across different locations. Like, we are just a family. We are not rich. We are not, inheriting a whole amount of money or winning the lotto or anything crazy like that. My mum has been the only income earner for the last, 18 months essentially. And it's just crazy. She's a nurse. It's not like we're not rich. Like, we are just your everyday people who have shown up and tried and just never given up, been so resourceful and resilient. So anyways, not trying to make this a sob story or anything like that, but it was just like, that was the journey. And that's what we wanted to showcase, is that, despite how hard everything has been and how negative everyone's been about money and stress and things, we have created something that is quite literally a miracle. And so putting that pitch out there, it had a good amount of written of like, here's the key information to know about our journey, our story. And essentially you want to think of it like, what are the selling points of this? Like, what's going to make it a great story? Think of like 3 to 5 things. And that way they can get different angles on it. Now, you can kind of pre-frame them and almost present your pitch in a way that this is a story you want to run with. Or you can also give them, here's some of the different things that I think would be really relevant that we could talk about. And so that's kind of what I did. I did a bit of both. I spoke about things that I knew were relevant to what's going on in the world right now, and then how our business tied in with that and how our story tied in with that. So we sent the pictures off. I got a response back from the Albany Advertiser. Now, it was really interesting because in the past, when I've had media done about me, I've just been called up on the phone. They ask a few questions and then they wrote an article and then they just requested some pictures that I may have had taken in the past. So that's when it's like, they don't think the story is like too hard. It's just like, if you've already got the assets there, we can write something up. And I still got them on the front page, and I had a exclusive like half-page write-up about me. This is when I was competing in Miss Universe. But it wasn't much of a process. Whereas this time round, for the Albany Advertiser and Wild West Bowling, we had a reporter come to our venue. So they checked out the entire venue. They wanted to do an exclusive interview. So what this meant was we weren't allowed to go to any other news outlets and have them run a story until the Albany Advertiser had released their article on us. And so essentially what this is doing is it's giving them the exclusive first look. They come into our venue, they took photos. So they took photos of myself, my brother, my mum, my dad, and also Brian Hammer, our landlord, who has quite literally saved the day. He extended the rent-free period for us, and he also has financially backed us, lending over $300,000 when we almost went bankrupt. So he really saved the day for us as a family. He comes in every single day. This man is 87 years old, and he just believes in what we're doing and has honestly become a part of our family. And it's really beautiful to be able to share this journey with him. We all made it on the front cover. Then we also had photos of us on the new bowling alley lanes with bowling balls. We had a few photos in the bar. And so they wanted to get some different pictures showcasing the different areas, which was really cool. Then we had the news reporter sit down with myself, and then my dad came as well. And we spoke to her for about 30 to 40 minutes. So it was quite an in-depth interview, I would say. What they wanted to know in the interview was, obviously, why did you start this? What was the reason or the purpose? What was the backstory? Why this business of all businesses we could choose? And so we had to explain a lot about This is our 8th business we're going into. We've been in family business for 17 years. All the different entertainment venues we've had, from go-karting to a drive-in cinema, the old bowling alley. We ran rodeos. Last year we did the music festival, just really tying in how all of those journeys through having all the different businesses had led us to this point. And she was great. She really spoke about how we got from where we started to where we are today. She mentioned all the different businesses we owned and why we're doing this, which I loved. And then on top of that, she really wanted to know what were some of the challenges that we faced. Obviously, it wasn't done in a negative light. She was talking about some of the things that we did struggle with, but then she really tied it in with how we overcame those things or what some of those experiences have been for us. And when she wrote the article, it was in a positive light. I was really grateful for how she did it. However, in the past, when we've run, the rodeo or something like that, we would pay for advertising. We would have a news article done and then front cover of the news. You wouldn't believe it. It would be like animal cruelty, something like that. And just this whole write-up about how rodeos are all harming animals. And it's like, you've just paid for advertising. Plus you've also gone and had this story done and then they twist the whole thing against you. So I am someone who has not had great experience from going and doing PR. Sometimes these stories get flipped on you. You don't know what the narrative is. And so to have this bowling alley be such a positive piece, I was really happy with it. Now, the other thing that she wanted to know about in the news article when she was kind of doing her report were, what were the features? What were the things that people are going to want to come to this place and see? What kind of experience can they expect? And obviously, because we had an old bowling alley and then we had a new one, what's the difference? Why should people care? And then on top of that, there was also some interesting things about okay, how much did this cost? What were your expectations around it? What can people expect when they come in? Is this going to be affordable for families and things like that? And then I think lastly, it was just, who are the people that you want to thank and what are your hopes for the future? So it was really getting a broad picture about this whole journey and then what's coming next. And I think that when I look at that article and I read through it, I'm like, this is great. I'm really happy with it. But the reason why I share this with you is because we actually had a second news interview, which was done with GWN7. We had our story run on the 4 p.m. Perth news on Friday, the 29th of November. And we also had it on the 6 p.m. news in GWN7 regional. So that shows Albany, Bunbury, Margaret River, all of those regional areas that aren't Perth City. Now, the GWN7 was not positive in the way that the Albany Advertiser one was. And it really hit me because when the reporter came in, and she was lovely, I got along with her really well, but it was just seeing how obviously her bosses, as in her producers, wanted her to push the story. It didn't come from a positive space of, wow, this is an incredible achievement that you guys have got and done. They were wanting to really push the cost of living crisis agenda. And for me, I felt really almost disheartened or disappointed that that's what they were really pushing this story or why they were using us, because it was going to fit in for that. And I understand, cost of living is such a big thing. But after experiencing this firsthand, I got to see how much the media manipulate things and why they create all this fear and this control because of the stories. So I'm going to share with you exactly what happened and just be really honest about it, because I don't think you see how news interviews work. So basically, the reporter came on site and once again, she just had a look through the venue, got an understanding of how it all works. And she interviewed both myself, my dad, and then also my brother, Mike. And all of us did an interview for around 5 to 10 minutes each. So basically what they do is they set the camera up and then you'll be standing there and they'll stand next to the camera, have a mic and just ask you a few questions and then you answer the question, and it's just constantly filming the whole way through. Now, the questions that they were kind of asking both my brother and I were, what is it like being a part of a family business? What were the biggest challenges that you faced? How did it feel to almost go bankrupt? And honestly, all the questions were done in quite a negative kind of light. Like it was really, well, I wouldn't say light, negative dark, if that's a word, but it just wasn't a feel good thing. And every time she would ask another question, it would almost be like digging deeper to see if you slip up. So for example, it might be, how has this affected you guys financially? And then have you guys been having any fights in the family? Who's been the person that has caused the most amount of stress? And so I don't know, it just didn't feel great getting asked those questions because it's like they're looking for something that they're going to use. It's not like, how did you overcome these challenges? What were some of the greatest wins? Who do you have to thank? It was nothing like that, like the first interview. So then my brother got interviewed and then my dad got interviewed, and a lot of the questions they were asking around, how much did the fit out cost? What were some of the biggest challenges? Why did the project blow out? And I guess, why did you decide to do all of this? And what were your concerns around the cost of living crisis? And then by the time it got to me, because I'm across more of the operations side in terms of the business back end, because being a business coach, you understand sales, marketing, finances, all of those leadership, hiring, like all of those ops. She started digging really deep with me about, obviously, first question, what's it like being a part of a family business? And then starting to ask, well, why did the project blow out? And then she started digging deeper and deeper, like it was almost looking for us to admit that it was all our fault or for us to blame other businesses or blame other people. Like it just felt like a shaming kind of scheme. I don't know. Maybe that sounds extreme, but if you were in the room and you saw those interviews, you would understand what I mean. Then we had those 3 interviews done. She took just one little snippet of her talking about the bowling alley. So that would obviously show for a short amount of time in the news. And then after that, because we kind of got along outside of all the interview questions, she said, can you come down the street with me and do some voxies? Now, I don't actually know what a voxie means, but essentially what we do is we go down the street, we find people and we ask them a question, and then they just get recorded and then their little part gets snipped into the news interview. So I'm actually kind of glad I went to do these voxies because it showed me another side of like this whole process. So firstly, we're in Albany. People do not like being in front of the camera. We were like outside Audi. We had the camera set up and the microphone, and people were just judging hard. Like the amount of rejection I faced, it was just like hurting my soul. And as a business owner, we all face rejection, but man, I could just never do one of those sales roles. In the middle of the shopping center when there are those stalls set up and they're trying to sell you, a perfume sample or some MLM scheme or something like that. I just could never do that. It's too full on. It's just too much rejection for me. But that was pretty much what it felt like. And so we had a lot of people walking past, and we had one amazing lady. She came up to us and she was just full of life. She said, oh my gosh, what are you guys up to? And we said, I'm one of the owners of the bowling alley that's opening up this weekend, and I really just wanted to get some of your feedback around how you're feeling about the opening. Is it something that interests you or you couldn't care less? And so she was like, oh yeah, no worries. I'll get on camera. So she got on camera and she said, she got asked some questions about like, have you heard about the new bowling alley? What are your initial thoughts? Do you think this will be good for the Albany community or not? And she was like, this is amazing. There's no other entertainment things for families to do. I've followed along their whole journey on Facebook. It's really been really incredible. So she was really positive. Then I had a second lady come and she was kind of like, oh, what are you doing? Oh no, maybe not. And she didn't want to do it. And then I just like, can you please do this for us? We haven't had anyone else. And she ended up caving and doing it for us. And she was a mum. So she was representing, I guess, more the family spec. And she said, yeah, for my kids, they've been waiting to have their birthday parties here. They're really excited. I think the pricing's super cost effective for families, and we really look forward to seeing the venue. Got a Christmas party booked too. So everyone's got their Christmas parties booked at Albany. It is insane. Like over 100 businesses within December have their Christmas parties booked with us. So on top of that, we had our last lady and she was great. But I tell you what, the news, when they released the one snippet part out of an interview, it was taken completely out of context. So she was asked, same kind of questions. How are you feeling about the bowling alley? But then she was also asked, what do you think about it? Will it be affordable for families or not? Now, her response was along the lines of, I've been watching the Kennedys' journey on Facebook, and it is incredible to see what they're doing for the Albany community, creating something for families, for friends, for people to go out and do. But at the end of the day, they're a family. They've got to put a roof over their heads and be able to afford things. And what they've done has been a miracle. Like, she said something around like it being a miracle, it being inspirational to see that they have been able to get through that hard time and then create this venue for everyone. That interview got taken so far out of context because when they put the news article together, they cut out everything else and it said they're just trying to put a roof over their heads and, you know, the cost of living and everything. It was something along the lines of that. I need to go rewatch the article. It's honestly, and it just, when I first saw it, I sat there and I was like, oh my gosh, what the hell? She didn't even say that. And then I remember when we were in the car and the reporter and I were driving to go do these Voxies, and she was saying, all right, we need 3 types of people. We need a mum, like preferably a family. We need someone who's a bit older. And then we also just need maybe a third person who is kind of neutral. And I said, well, what kind of things are you looking for? And she's like, well, we need someone who's going to complain about the price and the cost of living, because then we can kind of fit it in of like you guys saying when you were cost effective in having the lane hire instead of the standard game prices. And I was like, oh, okay. So that's interesting. And we had 3 females, so we didn't have any males. We didn't have any kids in those interviews. It was just like single people on their own. And I could kind of feel that from the interview they did on myself, my brother and my dad, that it was kind of pushing that negative light. It then moved towards, okay, how do we get the community to then start saying that cost of living's hard, times are tough, all those key words that we keep hearing. And so anyways, she dropped me back. She got a bit of B-roll content and then that was it. And I didn't get to see the news go live because I was working doing the grand opening. But then I logged on to 7 News and was able to catch the replay. And I watched the replay, and it's not a bad news article or anything like that. It just wasn't what we expected. And it was really heavily focused on more the financial side. And just to see that one lady, her story being taken out of context, like you could see the interviews when the people were saying things like, oh, I'm really excited for it. They never used that part. They used the bit where they were the most serious and saying something either serious or kind of, concerning. And so that one snippet out of a whole minute or 2 minutes, just when you take those few words, it gets taken completely out of context. And this is what we see happen with reality TV and obviously the media, but people don't realize that if they don't know it exists. So the news can manipulate your character. They can manipulate your story. They can use the words against you because they take that one little snippet that they want and then everything else is just completely out of context. And so you might say, I love bowling, but previously I've injured myself, something. What they're going to do is not going to take the I love bowling part. They're going to say previously I was injured doing this. And then they're going to make it sound really negative. And so if you're someone that watches the news and you believe it like gospel, or you think that it's true, everything you're seeing, especially when it comes to things like what's going on financially, COVID, housing prices, all of that, I fail to believe and buy into those stories anymore because I've seen firsthand. And like even before this, I already knew that stuff is so sensationalized, but just to see how heavily things can be manipulated, it is concerning. And the reason why I really wanted to share this on the podcast is because people don't see this. And if you were to go get PR or you're going to do something like this, this could happen to you. And so for me, I've done a bit of media training in terms of learning what to say and what not to say. If you're more short and sharp with your answers and they're kind of neutral, then you're going to be safe. But as soon as you start going on those tangents, getting really passionate, revved up, that's when you open yourself up to problems. So that news came out, watched it, and, it wasn't super bad or anything like that. It wasn't ruining the business. But that lady I told you, her little snippet that got taken out of context, she commented on the post And she said, nope, I did not say that. This has been taken out of context. And then you see other people commenting and it's like, there's going to be a lot of fights here. And then you've got obviously our cult following of fans who have seen the whole journey, who actually know us for who we are and what we've done. And they're like, you guys have done an amazing job. Thank you for bringing this to the Albany community. And so the other side of when these articles come out is you have to just not care about what other people have to say, because the type of people that watch the news religiously and are keyboard warriors online, they usually have no lives. They're not doing anything with their life and they're just sitting there complaining about everything. And so, some of the most incredible entrepreneurs or people I know that have had PR around launching their business, their product, their service, it could literally be life-changing, but there's going to be someone on there who has something negative to say and wants to bring you down, and you have to be so okay with just not caring about it. What they say does not mean anything about you. It has more of a reflection of who they are and how they're living their life. If they're that miserable and they have to say something negative, it's just like, I feel sorry for you that that's how you spend your free time. So, with the whole PR side of things, I think it was a really interesting experience to go through. And it was great that I could trial and test this for Wild West Bowling before I really push it for my personal brand, Sammy Kennedy, and then also beauty industry leaders, which is the main goal. I really want to try get more PR and growth around beauty industry leaders, which, whether I succeed, whether I fail, I'm here to share the journey because it doesn't really matter if it's not perfect. It doesn't really matter if you get rejected. It's just about sharing what you're going through, what you're learning, and hoping that someone can take something valuable away from it and learn or be inspired. And, with the whole PR thing, I found that there's obviously different strategies, like getting on other people's podcasts. That's a PR strategy. Getting in radio shows, getting in news outlets. Like, it just depends on what medium or form you want to get into. But how do I perceive PR? I think you have to learn how the whole game works for it to work for you. And you also have to be aware that sometimes things are going to get twisted and your story is going to be changed and there's quite literally nothing you can do about it. The best thing you can leverage is the exposure you're going to get from it. You're always going to have, diehard fans who really stand by you because you share those same values as them, and maybe you're interesting. Maybe they just like you as a person. Maybe they love what you stand for. And then you're always going to have those haters who don't like what you're doing, that always have something to say and want to complain. And sometimes PR is just really pushing you out on that larger scale and filtering out who are more of my diehard fans and who are going to be more of my haters. And so you're just going to focus on creating the content, creating the services, creating the products, creating the offerings within your business that really serve the diehard fans, because they're the ones that bring in the money and the growth for your business, not the haters. Now, in saying that, both fans and haters are great assets to your business because what they do is they talk about you. And the more they talk about you, the more brand awareness you get. And so when I had Davey from Heya TV, he was one of the organizers that ran the Beauty and Brains pageant with me last year. He said to me, any publicity is good publicity. And I was just like, what? And when he explained it in the sense of like, it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, what it's going to do is bring more brand awareness. You get more traffic. You get more people talking about your stuff. It filters out who loves you and who doesn't. And it just, ever since then, I realized, okay, well, maybe this didn't work out the exact way I wanted it to, but what it has done is it's helped our business significantly with more brand awareness. So the other day I was looking through all of the numbers and everything that we've been able, well, not we, but I've been able to achieve for Wild West Bowling. So to give you an idea, within the last 30 days, our website has had 2,338 sessions. So that's up 145% on the previous month. Every single day, we are getting on average 35 to 40 clicks to contact us. And then with the grand opening event I wanted to run, it didn't go as well as I wanted to. And there were a few different factors that came into that. essentially what the problem was we didn't know when we were actually opening because we couldn't gain our certificate of occupancy, and our building certified needed us to change a few things, and there was a lot of paperwork. So the original date we wanted to have our grand opening, we were so not sure and on the fence for like the 2 weeks leading up to it. So we weren't going hard in our marketing. However, we were still keeping the audience engaged and sharing content, giving them updates and things like that. But I think because there was so much uncertainty when it came to actually launching the thing, everyone was kind of, I don't know, they just weren't as focused as normal. We had Black Friday sales going on in the same weekend of this grand opening. So Black Friday sales, you've just had the Albany show, you know, it's a hot day. There's just so many different factors that were like, it's just not going to work as well. We did all right. We managed to make $7,260 over a weekend. Now, if we were to fully have sold out, we could have made around 35 grand. However, you know, you take these lessons and you just roll with it. Now that sounds like, all right, that's all right. But you know what has worked really well? And I don't know if this is another factor as why people weren't buying as many grand opening tickets. It could have been price. It could have been not the right date. It could have been the fact that people already had things on, uncertainty, all of that. But the other thing is we have a lot of Christmas parties booked with us, and I think people have been waiting and hanging out for those. So who knows? However, the wins that I've been having in my own strategy ahead of all this PR stuff coming out was that I was able to secure over $50,000 worth of bookings and get paid out a 50% deposit, which gave us the cash flow to really help get our doors open sooner. So just get over the line. And for me, I remember, you know, making a $10,000 month seemed so impossible when I first started business. And I did that when I had a beauty salon within the first month of opening the second time round. And then, you know, in coaching, I hit like a 20K month and I was like, wow, this feels surreal. But to hit a $50,000 month, that should be a massive achievement. And I just sat there and I was like, it just feels surreal. Like in the context of knowing that you owe $1.7 million plus interest, which will end up blowing it out to like 2.5 at the end of the day. It was just like hitting a 50K month. I'm like, all right, we got to hit another 50K month. We need 100K months. And so when you start doing all these big things in business, it's really interesting because I really miss the appreciation of smashing those smaller goals, because when you're doing things on a bigger scale, you don't realize that it's a big achievement. You just sit there and you go, all right, we've done this. We need to do it again. How do we replicate this? How do we make it even bigger and better? And so one of the lessons that I really wanted to reflect on and share with you is that no matter what stage you're at in business, whether you're making $1,000 a month, whether you are making $10,000 a month, whether you're making $100,000 a month, whether you're making $1 million a month, always hold gratitude for what you have right here and right now. Because if you don't appreciate and recognize the things you have, the person you're becoming, and what you're achieving now, you definitely won't recognize it when you start achieving bigger and better things in the future. And if the whole reason why you're doing this is for fulfillment and purpose, if you can't take a moment to step back and look at what you've created and be proud of it, what's it all for? You know, throughout this whole process of launching the podcast, doing beauty industry leaders, getting the community together and, you know, wanting to launch that, but then realizing my family really needed me, and I was having other coaches and things like that in my life tell me, you know, you just need to leave them and let them do that on their own. You need to focus on you. And I'm not that type of person. I do value family, and it has been really hard at the best of times to try balance and find both. But because they're both priorities, I have found a way to make it work, and in my own way. And that's fine. No one else is living my life. They're not doing what I'm doing. So I am a little bit crazy to think that I could do this. But the fact that I did think I could do it is the reason why I pulled it off. And, you know, something that not a lot of people know has been going on in the background for not just me, but also my family, is while we've been struggling building this business and getting it to the stage of opening, you know, my grandpa on my dad's side, as in his dad, he has gone really downhill with his health, which has been heartbreaking. You know, he was such a great teacher, and he was very active in the community, knew a lot of people, and he got Alzheimer's and, there were warning signs and things like that, but just the rapid deterioration of his health. And, someone who's, 6'3" or 4 and, used to sit around, 75, 80 kilos is down to, 60 or so. You can't have a conversation with him. Sometimes he remembers who you are. And I think that amongst all of this, it's just made me realize that life's too short to not do the things you want to do, to not go and put the pitch out there, to, not build the business you want to build, to not spend time and say, I love you to the people you enjoy having in your life. And so throughout this whole project and the reason why I started coaching and how I got to where I am, it all comes back to becoming the best at what you're doing and getting the best out of life. How do I become the best possible version of myself? How do I build the best possible business for the lifestyle I want to live? And when you start asking yourself those questions, you start to think about the bigger picture. And when you've got an idea about what the bigger picture is and why you want it, the how slowly starts to come to you, and it's not always in the way you think it will be. The amount of times that I've been taken off track of the things I thought I wanted or what I was working towards, and then something came up and I ended up adapting. At the time, it feels really hard to accept that this perfect plan I had in place is not working out the way I wanted it to. But on the other side of that is realizing that these events are leading me to something bigger and better. And so I know this is kind of off the tangent of PR and, getting more awareness in the public eye, but I think that the reason why we want all this exposure and why we want to be seen and heard and respected and valued and known as an authority, I think you also got to really connect in with yourself and think about what kind of impact and purpose do I want in life? How do I want to make people feel? What is my mission going to do for the world? How is it going to make a difference? And so getting clear on these things and really starting to understand why you're doing all these things, how you want to show up, who you want to be, what kind of brand you want to be, what kind of business you want to run. When you have more clarity on that, I think life gets to be a lot easier because you wake up each morning knowing what you're working towards, and it doesn't have to make sense to anyone else but you. And this is why I'm here on Beauty Industry Leaders. I know I'm not always talking about beauty business strategy. I do relate it a lot back because business is a completely different ballgame than beauty within itself. You have to understand both, obviously, but the actual skill of running a business, I really respect and appreciate people who have taken the time to learn business or who are willing to learn business. I think that's a massive thing. There's people who just show up and they think I'll just wing it, and then they'll complain about everything not working, and then they'll go back to a 9 to 5, and then they'll go, I'll try it again. And then there's other people, they're like, I have no clue, but I'm going to try and I'm going to show up. And if I don't have the answer, I'm going to find it. And I think that if you're that second person who is trying and doing the best they can and so resilient and resourceful, I want you to be in my world. I want you to be showing up to this podcast because I have so much to share with you, and I really value you for showing up every week and giving your time into listening to this. So thank you so much for being a part of the Beauty Industry Leaders journey. And if I have been able to provide you with some form of value, or I've inspired you, or you've learned something or done something that made you uncomfortable, but you were excited about the result it got you, please send me a DM, share your wins with me. I love hearing all this stuff. My goal for the podcast is to really get my community more engaged. And so doing those Q&As, being able to really serve you in the best way possible, that's my goal. If you've been loving the podcast, can you please take 30 seconds out of your day and go to Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review for the show? I just found out recently that when you rate things on Spotify, it doesn't rank in any of the charts or anything like that. So if you can please go onto Apple Podcasts, leave Beauty Industry Leaders a 5-star review and a comment about what you've been loving so far. That will give me some great feedback on the type of content that you want to hear more about and how I can just make the show bigger and better for you. I hope you have an amazing week. Thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you next week. Bye.
Audience exclusive.